Law and equity both create interests in property, identifying people's rights in relation to things. A legal property right, such as ownership, recognises title and the freedom to control or dispose of property without unlawful interference from others. The property right itself is the objective of the law. Equity, however, doesn't create property rights just for the sake of it. Equity will only create property interests necessary to achieve a just outcome in a specific case. Equitable property interests, like trusts and mortgages, are created in order to properly bind the consciences of the parties. Consequently, equitable property rights can be much more complicated than legal property rights. Equitable property rights are moulded to fit the circumstances, while legal property rights stand alone. In this case, Mr. Livingston died, leaving personal property in Queensland and New South Wales. A third of his estate went to Mrs. Colson, but before Mr. Livingston's estate was distributed, Mrs. Colson also died. The Queensland Commissioner for Stamp Duties decided that because Mr. Livingston's estate contained property in Queensland, and because Mrs. Colson was entitled to 1/3 of that estate, she must own property in Queensland. So they levied death duties on her estate to tax that property, taxing property she hadn't even received at the time of her death. The matter ended up before the Privy Council. The Commissioner argued that because Mrs. Colson was a beneficiary of the estate, she had an equitable interest in the property in that estate, which was essentially being held on trust by the executor. The Privy Council disagreed. Viscount Radcliffe said, "Equity did not create for residuary legatees a beneficial interest in the assets in the executor's hands during the course of administration. Until administration was complete, no one was in a position to say what the residue, when ascertained, would consist of or what its value would be." In other words, the executors might conceivably sell the Queensland properties or give them to another beneficiary. Nobody could tell. There was no actual reason for equity to create any clearer property rights. Equity simply bound the executor to do their job conscionably. So the tax office in Queensland was not entitled to levy the duty. This case teaches us that equitable interests in property are only created to support some other purpose of equity law, and where there is no such purpose, no property rights will be created.